Have you ever been on a team that just clicks? Where everything just flows and you end up doing incredible work? Well, today we're going to break down the science of what makes those dream teams tick and what separates them from the ones that, well, don't. Let's dive into the secrets of high-performing teams.
It's the question we've all asked ourselves, right? Because you've probably been on both kinds of teams, the ones that are amazing and the ones that are a total train wreck. So what's the real difference? What separates success from just pure frustration? It turns out there's actually a predictable pattern to how great teams are built.
And look, this stuff matters a lot. So much of our professional life is spent working with other people. So understanding how teams really work isn't just some soft skill, it's an absolutely critical part of your career. Because when teams work, incredible things happen. And when they don't, well, we all know how that feels.
So, where do we even begin? Well, believe it or not, every single team follows a surprisingly predictable path. You can almost think of it like a map, a four-stage journey that takes a group of individuals and turns them into a powerhouse unit.
Okay, so check this out. This is what's called the team performance curve. And the really interesting thing to notice is that dip. See that? Performance starts out okay, but then it actually gets worse before it gets better. But that drop isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's actually a crucial and totally normal part of the process that every team has to go through to get to the good stuff.
So let's break down what those four stages actually are. First, you have forming. This is kind of the honeymoon phase, right? Everyone's polite, trying to make a good impression. But then comes storming, and that is the dip in the chart we just saw. This is where the politeness wears off, people start to disagree, ideas clash, it can feel really messy, but it's essential. If a team can get through that storm, they get to norming. This is where you start to figure things out, roles, goals, how you're going to work together. And finally, you hit performing. That's the sweet spot, where the team is just humming along like a well-oiled machine.
But here's the catch. That journey to the performing stage, it is definitely not guaranteed. There are these huge common traps along the way that can completely sink a team. So let's talk about how to spot, and more importantly, how to escape these productivity killers.
First up, trap number one, the dreaded, soul-crushing, unproductive meeting. We have all been there. And this data is pretty wild. It shows a huge spike in how unproductive we feel as the day goes on. So that 4 p.m. brainstorming session your boss loves to schedule, yeah, you're basically fighting an uphill battle against human biology.
So what's the antidote? It's something that sounds almost too simple, a great agenda. And I'm not talking about just a list of things to talk about. A real agenda makes the goals crystal clear so everyone knows why they're in the room. It puts a time limit on each topic to keep things moving, and it defines roles so people know what's expected of them. It is literally the difference between a productive session and a complete waste of everyone's time.
Okay, the next trap is way more subtle and, frankly, a lot more dangerous. It's called groupthink, and it's what happens when the desire to keep the peace and get along becomes more important than thinking critically and making smart decisions.
You know that feeling deep in your gut when you know something is a really bad idea, but you just nod and say yes anyway because you don't want to rock the boat? That's it. That is the moment. And that moment is exactly where great ideas go to die.
So what are the red flags here? Well, one is collective rationalization. That's the echo chamber where everyone in the room convinces each other a bad idea is actually brilliant. Then there's self-censorship, where people just stop voicing their real opinions. And that leads to this illusion of unanimity, where it looks like everyone's on board, but only because no one's speaking up. It's all driven by that good old-fashioned peer pressure to just go with the flow.
Okay, so avoiding those traps is one thing. That's defense. But what about offense? How do you proactively build a team that doesn't just perform, but actually innovates? What is the secret sauce for unlocking that next-level creativity?
Just think about it for a second. What would you guess? Is it having the smartest people in the room? Is it having a bottomless budget? A famous, visionary leader? All the research actually points to something else entirely.
The number one predictor of team success is something called psychological safety. And let's be super clear, this is not about just being nice. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe enough to be candid, safe enough to ask a so-called dumb question, safe enough to challenge an idea, safe enough to admit they made a mistake, all without being afraid they'll be shamed or punished for it.
And you can see right here why this is so critical. Psychological safety isn't just another box to check off. It is the absolute foundation that everything else is built on. It's what makes honest feedback possible. It's what allows people to experiment and take smart risks. It's what lets you have real conversations about what's not working. Without it, the whole system just crumbles. And that brings us right to the ultimate stress test of psychological safety, the difficult conversation. How a team navigates these moments tells you pretty much everything you need to know about its real strength.
You know, our natural human instinct is to avoid conflict, to just sidestep the awkwardness. But high-performing teams, they do the exact opposite. They actually lean into the disagreement because they see it not as a threat, but as the fastest path to finding a better solution.
And the good news is, you don't have to just wing it. There's a simple 4-step framework. First, start well. Just declare your positive intentions. Saying something like, "Hey, I really want to figure this out together," can change everything. Second, and this is the most important and hardest part, listen to their story. First, just listen. Then, and only then, do you move to step 3, tell your story. Finally, you work together to create a shared story, finding that common ground and a way forward for everyone.
Now, a really powerful tool here is the idea of validation. And this is a game changer. It's simply recognizing that someone else's perspective is legitimate from their point of view. It does not mean you agree with them. But a simple phrase like, "I can see why you feel that way," or "That's a valid point," can totally transform the dynamic of a tense conversation.
So in the end, it all comes back to that foundation of psychological safety. And that's not something that just appears overnight. It's built brick by brick through small, consistent actions every single day. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. What is one thing you can do this week, whether you're a leader or a team member, to make your team just a little bit safer for people to speak up, to take risks, and to do their best work?